Hey. Welcome everyone to the seminar. I'm Beth Machesky. I am the Community Engagement and Outreach Lead here at the Illinois Sustainable Technology Center, which is part of the Prairie Research Institute at the University of Illinois. As a land-grant institution, the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign has the responsibility to acknowledge the historical context in which it exists. In order to remind ourselves and our community, we begin this event with the following statement. We are currently on the lands of the Peoria, Kaskaskia, Piankashaw, Waya, Miami, Mascoutin, Odawa, Sauk, Piscataqui, Kickapoo, Potawatomi, Ojibwe, and Chickasaw nations. It is necessary for us to acknowledge these Native nations and for us to work with them as we move forward as an institution. Over the next 150 years, we'll be a vibrant community inclusive of all our differences, with Native peoples at the core of our efforts. So this seminar and all of the Illinois Sustainable Technology Center seminars are certified green events through the University of Illinois Institute for Sustainability, Energy, and Environment. So to find out more information about green events, you can visit sustainability.illinois.edu. To find out more information about the Illinois Sustainable Technology Center seminar or to sign up for our events list, you can visit istc.illinois.edu/events. So some housekeeping items for today. Today's webinar is being recorded. The recording will be available for viewing in about a week. For everyone online, you'll remain muted for the entire seminar. Reminder for everyone in the room to mute electronic devices so we don't get any feedback. And then we'll hold questions until the end. For those of you in the room, you can raise your physical hand and be called on. Your voice and video will be recorded using the owl in the center of the room. For those online, you can type in your questions through the Zoom Q&A. You can upvote your questions using the thumbs up button in the Zoom Q&A. And then at the end, when I read the questions to the speaker, I will see which ones have been upvoted and ask those first. And then we'll just take questions in the order that they were received. And then also for those of you online, if you have technical difficulties, please send me a private chat message in Zoom. So with that, I'll welcome our director, Kevin O'Brien, to introduce our speaker.
Thank you very much. It's an absolute pleasure today to announce our special speaker, Dr. Ellis Marshall, who's here from Teesside University. We've had the pleasure of having Teesside University here last week, and then Ellis has been here this week to kind of do some drill down discussions. For those of you who are not familiar with Teesside University, the best way I would describe it is Teesside, if many of you are familiar with the Inflationary Reduction Act funds from the U.S. Department of Energy, Teesside has, I would say, cleaned up on the funding over in the UK, and that funding is somewhat similar to what we have had over here. So it's a great potential partnership. We're talking about the formation of a transatlantic net zero center of excellence, which is a very exciting concept. We have many things in common with Teesside. So at this point, I will turn it over to you, Ellis, if you could take us through and talk a little bit and explain to the audience what's happening over there in Teesside. Very exciting.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Kevin. And I'd like to just start by saying thank you very much for hosting this as well the past week and myself for 2 weeks. Appreciate it all. So yeah, my name is Dr. Ellis Marshall. I'm the Business Partnership Manager at the Net Zero Industry Innovation Centre, and I'm also a Senior Scientist in Industrial Decarbonisation for the Centre. So I wanted to start the session just by giving you an overview of where Teesside is, because I believe that not everyone in the room may know where it is in the UK. It is outside London, if that helps. So here we are. So on the right hand side is the UK. You can see where Teesside is marked. And on this lovely map as well, what I've included is the industrial emissions. So you can see in the Teesside is 3.1 Humber, 12.4, and we have various other institutions around the globe or around the UK. So why am I focusing on industrial clusters? I'll come on to this in a minute. So this is part of it was our previous Green Growth Challenge, and it's now the Department of Net Zero and Energy Security Challenge. So yeah, what it is we are looking at to decarbonise our industry. I'll come on to why is our industry and not just our transport or commercial industries. So here's Teesside. So this is Teesside, which is hosted or led by the Tees Valley Combined Authority. They are our local authority, so you can class us sort of like a state. In the same map, I want to do a size equivalency of Teesside against one of your states in Illinois. I had to scroll quite far down the list to find Brown County, and it was actually size equivalent to Teesside. So in relative sort of aspects, we're very condensed compared to you guys. The UK doesn't have a lot of space like you in the USA, so we are very condensed. The Tees Valley is made up of 5 combined authorities. So we sit in Middlesbrough itself. The Teesside University sits in Middlesbrough city centre. And sort of host to all these. Interestingly enough, our treasury is actually going to be located in Darlington. So we're actually decentralising our UK government treasury up into the north. So it's actually a really nice area to be in, getting a lot of interest from government itself and a lot of investment. So here is what I'll talk about the industrial emissions. So you can see on the left hand side is Teesside's industrial emissions, and on the right side is the UK average. We, as Teesside, are 6.4 tons of CO2 per person. So this is a lot. The average 1.24. Teesside is a condensed industrial cluster that needs decarbonising. This is the reason we need decarbonising. We have 66 companies, I believe, all based around our Tees Valley. You don't need to go into too much detail. It's not the best graphic, but there's a lot of industries here. And the biggest ones we're looking at are steel industries, cement industries. We have fertilizer companies, and we have mining companies, all based within our little county. Overall, this is 8.8 million tonnes of CO2 per year that we have to decarbonise. So we've got a long way to go. This is why it's so interesting to be in this region. We need to be the biggest loser overall. So on this map as well, in a hashed out area which is marked white, just in the background here is actually an old steelworks, which is now being demolished. And it was one of the largest sites in Europe. It is now the largest site of, well, it's the largest brownfield site in Europe. And we're actually redeveloping it to host new industry. So one new industry is actually a wind farm that's being hosted on there. And we've got applications for other industries to be hosted on this brown site. This brown site is also a bit of work I'm doing personally with Teesside University, which is looking at the use of slag waste in this region, because there is lots of it left. We're actually looking at redeveloping and reusing that slag waste for other processes. So why Teesside? I've already mentioned our sort of heritage is that Petersburg site. We've got a huge sort of plan for that site, huge development. I haven't mentioned this, but we will go on to this in a lot more detail, which is the major industry hubs. So we as Teesside are part of an industry hub, which are meant to decarbonise the UK. That first image I showed you with the spots around the UK, that's an idea for like industrial clusters that need decarbonising. I can't really go too far and not mention our jobs as well. We could be estimated to have £7 billion of impact just in the region, just by interacting and going into carbon capture, hydrogen, and net zero technologies. So the area Teesside is going to be up and coming very soon. I'll come on to the home of the world's first carbon capture unit as well. So Tees Valley is, like I say, our combined authority. 5 counties that make up our combined authority. They actually have 4 focuses. So these two are hydrogen, circular economy, and the decarbonisation of our chemical production facilities, of which we have a few. It's quite interesting actually on Teesside. I quite like this story. It's talking about chemical industry and how well versed we are in chemical industry in Teesside. We're very used to, on a Tuesday afternoon, hearing sirens. No one panics, everyone goes about their day. It happens every Tuesday. We know about the chemical industry in the region. We just crack on and get on. So when you're going to look at societal change in the region, Teesside is actually quite open to it because we're used to the sirens, we're used to the potential of all this, but it never happens, but we're used to it. So we've got the chance to sort of work with that. We've got such a malleable county to work with. Why not? Other industries or other counties in the UK don't have these chemical sirens going off, don't have these hazards, don't have these warnings, because they don't have this industry in their region. That's quite interesting for us. So, Teesside Biography have goals that they want to reach. First one is looking at the generation from offshore wind. We in Teesside are lucky enough to have on our east coast the lovely sea, the North Sea, which is host to Dogger Bank, one of the world's largest wind turbine blade sites. So we have the potential here to expand it even larger and grow our offshore wind potential. So we're looking at generating up to 40 gigawatts of electricity. I'll talk about the low carbon hydrogen and the carbon capture, but among other things we're looking at is SAF, so sustainable aviation fuels, working with our local airports and local petrochemical industry. Again, another heritage for the region. So this is a sort of a quote I put together, but East Coast Cluster is an industrial cluster responsible for 15.5 million tons of CO2. I'm going to explain what the East Coast Cluster is. So the East Coast Cluster is actually a combination of net zero Teesside and that. So again, so on that first map, we have the Humber region about 13.3 million tons and the Teesside region of 3.1. So together we have combined to be 15.5, which is by far the biggest industrial cluster in the UK. So together we have a long way to go. In this sector as well, we have British Steel are our main sort of CO2 producers, including BP, Ellis Marshall, very bold, Anglo American and other large users. So what is the East Coast Cluster? Like I say, a combination of these two. Geographically, they're next door to each other, just separated by the national park. So this is North York Moors National Park. These are the two names of the two processes, net zero Teesside and zero carbon. So net zero Teesside, as Kevin mentioned at the start, is actually has been awarded £2.2 billion towards achieving its goal of putting a carbon dioxide line into Tees Valley and also a hydrogen pipeline into Tees Valley. When we say putting it in, it already exists, which is why we've been actually a target for this. We have all these pipelines in place that run out into the North Sea, because we've already been taking oil out of the North Sea in a large aquifer called Endurance. So in essence, we've already had half of the application ready to go, which is why we're so good in this. So you can see on the right hand side, we have a list of industries that are actually going to power us. So these are industries that are actually going to power into the CO2 pipeline. So they're going to inject their own CO2 into the pipeline, and that pipeline will run into Endurance. So it's still very exciting, and there's lots happening. So you can see some big names on here like Suez, Alphanar, and we have the OCs and as well. So as another aspect to all this as well, we actually, the university itself wants some Innovate UK funding. So Innovate UK is one of the funding parts we have delivered by government through another service called Innovate UK. And this is actually to help SMEs launch products or processes in the region. One of these is indirect air capture. So we're looking at, we're going to say we haven't seen anything else other than this, but the potentially one of the UK's first direct air capture units in the UK at Teesside University. So that'll be starting in September. And on top of that, we also have ammonia cracking into green hydrogen going to be happening in our Teesside area, and Teesside Uni is key. And then also lithium battery recycling. This is another sort of snapshot of our industrial clusters. So this is 3 major zones where the pipeline already exists, and where we're going to put some more pipelines as well. Again, it's based on the River Tees, which is it used to be a very large port. So we have 3 ports along the way to help us. If you ever visit Teesside, we have many, many bridges over this river, and a few famous ones of that. So I'm going to move on to the hydrogen pipeline now, which is going to start with blue hydrogen, and they're going to build in the green hydrogen. Estimated to be over 30 gigawatts of hydrogen. So this is actually going to be inputted by so these are the inputs for the hydrogen pipeline. So BP are going to put in some hydrogen, Industry media and Fruity. These are some of our suppliers of the hydrogen into the hydrogen pipeline. On this map here is the East Coast cluster hydrogen route. So it stretches from Teesside to the Humber region. Just go back a slide. What's it going to be used for? Hydrogen. So it's going to be used for SAF, so sustainable aviation fuels. We're going to use it for scrap steel, turn it into green steel. So actually, British Steel have already done it, but it's the production of steel from hydrogen. So they've already produced their first green steel. It looks exactly the same. It's not very exciting, but it is the potential of producing green steel. We're looking at hydrogen buses. We have it's the refueling hydrogen hub based at the Tees Valley Combined Authority Airport, which is where they have their office and the Teesside Airport. So that's ongoing, and I believe we're looking to scale up to buses and other public sector vehicles. One exciting thing that's happening in hydrogen is the hydrogen village as well. So this is based in Redcar. This is a project, and a few of our employees at the university are part of this as well, just to reduce their location. They're going to give them a free hydrogen boiler in the next few years and get to use hydrogen free for the next couple of years, to see how they can use it, how it affects them, and it's all for free. So you get the boiler replaced through a new hydrogen boiler installed, and so we're calling it the hydrogen village. And that funding will be announced very soon. And at the end of it, if they don't want their hydrogen boiler, it can be replaced back to standard gas boilers. Not only boilers, but it's also cooking on gas. So we'll be cooking on hydrogen instead. We've actually got a demonstration home based in Redcar as well to demonstrate it. Unfortunately, it's quite underwhelming. There is no difference. It doesn't change that much. It looks like a normal house. It just runs on hydrogen. It's not your home of the future. It looks quite normal. So it is worth going, but prepare to be underwhelmed, and it is a great opportunity, but yeah. So now I'm going to talk about the Net Zero Industry Innovation Centre. So I'm based at Teesside University, I'm an employee of Teesside University, and Net Zero Industry Innovation Centre is a research centre based at Teesside University. We're brand new. I started 18 months ago. We had no building at that point. We were a plot of land. We were discussing over the plot of land. It was very green. Nothing had started. We didn't have building plans ready to go. Over these 18 months, we've actually built this building, and about a month ago, we got the keys. So it's all very new, all very shiny as well inside. So we've been very busy for the past 18 months procuring a lot of equipment to go in there. During this time as well, we actually, one of our funders down here is the ERDF, so European Regional Development Fund. During this time, our building, we actually delivered a £16.4 million project to actually help SMEs in the region innovate, research, and collaborate in and around net zero. So usually you get given the funding to build the building and deliver the project. We actually build the building and deliver the project at the same time without building to deliver it in, which is quite a big feat for us actually. That's quite exciting. So yeah, one of the missions we want to sort of call as the Net Zero Centre is we want to impact locally, nationally, and also internationally, which is why we're here today. So we like to call this the holistic approach to net zero. So it's not just the engineering side of it as well. We also look at the other impacts to net zero. So later I'll go through our specific labs, but we have carbon capture, we have hydrogen, smart energy, circular economy, digital, business expertise, social research, creative industries, and policy and compliance. So this bottom layer is the non-engineering layer. So this is where we work at the business school, the School of Arts and Creative Industries, and also our social research. So this is looking at stuff such as the just transition. So how to transition the whole of society to net zero, not just the ones that can afford it. It's also looking at how creative industries can get involved to educate about net zero. So I've recently been to a theatre that's putting on net zero production, looking at the impact of going net zero and how it will change society. So looking forwards and doing theatre and art productions around it and into music. Policy and compliance is a big one. So I work in the circular economy sector, and we have to work with our environmental agency, just like you have to work with your EPA. And there's a lot of policy to be changed to actually introduce new guidelines to help us actually reach and decarbonize certain waste streams. So here's a picture. This is now live. Like I say, it took keys about a month ago. We've had a few events already, but we're going to have our big launch event sometime in the next few months, which we're very excited about. And so there's a bit of logistics. All of our research labs are at the back. And so we have capabilities of doing ammonia, hydrogen, methane, CO2, CO, and other gases in there. So in terms of facility itself, we have our hydrogen decarbonisation lab, looking at hydrogen transport mostly, but also geological impacts, risks, permitting and geology as well, is a few of the aspects we'll be looking at there. CCUS is in there as well, looking at how we store the carbon, utilise the carbon, and capture it. Circular economy. So this is waste utilisation. So we're actually doing a project with a company called Stuff for Life, and they work with a workwear supplier called Barco. And with them, we're actually taking PET workwear, so the high-risk workwear you get. Usually it lasts about a year or two, depending on the conditions, before it actually fails. And so after it's failed, it usually goes to landfill. So what we're doing is actually chemically recycling it back into its starting components, and then using that into plastics, either in the food industry or other such industries. In there as well, we're looking at mineral recovery as well. So I've already mentioned lithium-ion battery recycling, and also mineral recovery from brine solutions as well. An area we're looking into. We have a smart energy lab, looking at smart grids, microgrids. We're actually extending this outside the lab and going to extend it to the whole building. So we're going to manage our whole structure as a whole as a smart energy system. We have our digital lab where we do a lot of 7D BIM. So 7D BIM technologies is looking at the sustainability of your BIM model. So it's about putting on the headset, looking at a certain join or a certain aspect or a certain product in your building, and knowing its sustainability, so life cycle analysis and that CO2 impact. In that as well, I've also put our work with seagrass peatland monitoring. So we've just installed ground stations and CO2 sensors on the local peatland. So we're actually going to be monitoring the CO2 in that region for the next few years and seeing how it's changed and how it's impacted. We're hoping the peatlands actually take in CO2 and remaining, but we are skeptical if they're actually shrinking or expanding. And we also got seagrass. So we're working with one of our local companies, one of our local SMEs that we help through our EIGF project, and they actually hold the digital solution behind it. So they're actually looking at how much CO2 seagrass can take up, and then how it's used practically. And then on top of that, we have our thermal technologies lab, which is looking at coatings for various industries, including the car and plane industry. So these are high temperature coatings. So we're very proud to be a net zero centre. That's not hard, it's very hard to say on Monday actually, not too bad on Thursday. So we've actually been outstanding. So what we've done is locally they're sort of sourced our products. So cements are locally sourced, steel probably was quite locally sourced down the road. On top of the building, we have solar panels, we've got a green roof inside. We've worked quite hard with our contractors to make sure it's a net zero building, and it's actually something that the university is going to be taking for their next project builds, because they saw the increase on their demand from their side wasn't actually that high to make a net zero building. So it kind of makes sense to go that way. And I'll also mention our corporate sustainability award. And I usually put a cheesy picture of myself up there with the whole team holding a little trophy, but I've forgotten that one today. So this is part of NEPIC, who is our Northeast Processing Industry Cluster. Again, this word industry keeps popping up because we want to be this hub of industry collaboration and decarbonisation. So they're a local membership organisation who we applied for the award and work. So we've not only got our Net Zero Industry Innovation Centre next door, we've actually got a Net Zero Engineering Hall, basically a big warehouse where we can actually upscale our technologies from our centre to 5-plant scale. So TRL level 4 to 6, we assume in here. It's big and open at the minute. It's just finished completion, much like our Net Zero Centre. We have a few projects potentially going in there. So we're looking at eggshell recycling, so looking at using calcium carbonate from eggshells and also reuse the membranes. Ammonia cracking, battery recycling, solar thermal work, and this is probably where our DAP unit might go if we can't fit it on our roof. So on top of this centre and this engineering core, the university is also investing into 4 net zero professors, 2 of which came with us this week. We have 2 more associate professors to be assigned to the Net Zero Centre. So this is sort of a key role, a key strategic move for the university to invest in net zero and to help us on our net zero journey. And this will help us work with not only the Teesside Valley Combined Authority, but also the Department of Energy Security and Net Zero, and to work internationally and allow us to collaborate. So these professors are purely focused on research and have no teaching commitments, and are purely here to push us forward into the next world. So I couldn't go without talking about our hydrogen innovation program. So this is a researching and development fund, again another body, funding body from the UK. We're actually funding our hydrogen project, which is 14 postdocs in and around hydrogen. This is the hydrogen transport, hydrogen power, and hydrogen systems. It was the week before I came here, we actually held the first sandpit. So this is where we got all of the local industries involved in this to sit around and put down their ideas about the project, what they want the project to be, what they want it to do. Not just from the engineering side, we had a societal side there as well. So we had our societal professors there, sort of engaging and pushing projects towards certain aspects that would benefit the industry. We're very keen here to be industry-led. So the proportion in the room was very much industry, the proportion in the table was very much industry-led, and academics were purely there to soak up the ideas to move forwards. So this was a £11 million program, and this is for the next 5 years. We're going to be hosting these at the Net Zero Centre in collaboration with Durham University. We also have a few postdocs. So international collaboration. So we've actually signed MOUs with South Africa and Saudi Arabia. So we've been doing this for the past 6 months. So Gary's been visiting various places. He says the wine's very nice. This is my first one, and I can say the wine is very nice as well. So yes, we've been working on international partnerships, moving around not only the UK but the world, being seen as a sort of a catalyst towards net zero, and see what we're doing in net zero and the Teesside Valley is doing in net zero. I forgot to mention as well, but it's quite important. Teesside University is an anchor institution for the Teesside Valley. We are the only university in this region, so we can be seen as benefits towards this. I believe the next slide is actually you guys. So I've been taking my little bottle around everywhere I've been, so people here can probably recognise where these places are. So we've got Chicago, we've got Odinga, and we've got Hater, I would say it wrong. And of course, we've got ourselves up there. So yeah, thank you very much for hosting us, and we really enjoyed our time here. I've just got a few more slides, if that's all right. Yeah. So as well as you guys that we work with, we work across all and various sectors. Aviation, chemicals, forestry, waste, construction, to name but a few. I could go into examples of all of these, and I will. So this is our eggshells. So this is the calcium carbonates that we're going into. So they'll be coming into the net zero centre very soon, actually into the engineering hall, so looking at pilot and scale separation. So here we've got some facts and figures of how much potential CO2 they could reduce. And Connected are the company we're working with on the heat and monitoring. And we're actually working with our sister organisation. So our sister organisation is the National Horizon Centre. They are a biosciences-based centre and based just up the road in Darlington. So they're looking for the sort of the health of the soils, the bioeconomy of the soils, and the algae health, what's every growing. So we're looking at using them and working with them to actually go more in depth on peatland area, looking not only at CO2 capture, but at the microbes that are present in there and how they're being affected by the weather and that erosion in the area. Chestnut Capital is a plastics-based company we work with. They did traditionally start up, I'm sure you would have seen, young trees have a cover around them. They started up doing them, which were biodegradable, so that they could biodegrade over time. So one thing that they've actually done is to start looking at cable ties. So cable ties that eventually degrade over time. They're made out of not PLA, is what they assure us it's made out of. So they're all made out of sugars rather than plastic or polymer. So they've gone on to do row guards, tree guards, weed guards, and other study products. So this started to a final sort of remark. We bring your businesses net zero ambitions to life through innovative research projects and are fully equipped labs. So not only are we equipped at the net zero centre, but we also focus and use our Teesside University campus. So we have access to all their equipment as well. So we're not just one unit, we are a university in a whole, and we have access to their expertise as well as our expertise at the net zero centre. With that, I'll just thank you very much. If you want to add me on LinkedIn, I've got a little scan me. So if you want to get your phones out, do a QR code, and I've got my contact details for there. So thank you very much, and move on to questions.
Yep, we can take questions now. Online, you can type in your questions, or if you'd like, you can raise your virtual hand, and then here in the room, you can raise your hand as well.
So I'll take the first one here. And Ellis, first, very fascinating conversation. You know, it sounds like a great center that you're putting together. You mentioned a focus on TRL 4 to 6. Now, you also said, you talked about industrial interaction. And being the key, you talked about industry-led. So a question for you is, how do you balance being able to do the TRL 4 to 6, but also be industry-led? Because what I've seen a lot of times is when you become too far industry-led, they're going to push you to that TRL 8 to 9, those small incremental things, as compared to the big innovative things that you'd like to do. And wanted to get your thoughts on that.
That's a good question. So I think in the net zero centre, we have multiple stages that we can go through. So we have our net zero centre at 1 to 3. We have our engineering hall at 1 to 6. And then that's where we need to go to industry sites and maybe look at, like you guys, having some pits on those sites to actually be allowed to scale up from that to their actual manufacturing sites. I'm also just thinking out loud as well, but a few of our projects, so we mentioned there the hydrogen innovation project, which was industry led. We had industry around the table. these postdocs and these researchers are actually going to be based out there for industry. They're not going to be solely represented in the Net Zero Centre itself. We intend them to be out and about. So yes, they might get carried away with the industry. That's okay. That would be novel for us and exciting for us. But we also have that capacity as well on other projects, not just the hydrogen project, to pull it back and look at the pilot scale, the TRL Valley of Death, which we like to call it 4 to 6. That makes sense?
Yes, yeah, it's a great idea.
Yeah.
We have one from online.
Okay.
The attendee says, thanks for a great presentation. Could you please explain the research on hydrogen transportation? Also, is metal 3D printing proposed to be a part of the center in circular economy research?
Okay, so I'll answer the first one, which is the hydrogen transport. So like I say, we had some pits 2 weeks ago. We've included a few of our key industries, one of them being a company who actually uses a hydrogen bus to transport their buses, transport their employees from car park to site to help reduce their CO2 impact and carbon credits in essence. In short, we don't know what research we're doing around that yet, exactly, because we've just gone out with that. So we'll be finding out very soon. The 3D printing metal one is very interesting. Because my background is 3D printing metals and other industries, so I wouldn't know who sent that. But so we were looking at 3D printing in a whole to be a potential technology to actually utilize and go forwards in the Net Zero Centre, but we haven't actually included a metal printer as such in our building. But we are looking at other ways of doing it. So there is other ways of printing metals. So you could look at high temperature furnace,ing, calcining metals to actually produce
them. Ellis, I have a question regarding, in one of your slides, you mentioned Teesside is going to start like a hydrogen village soon,
Yeah.
where you guys provide hydrogen for household uses, right? So I was wondering, like, hydrogen, like when it burns, doesn't produce any color or smell or anything. So
Yeah.
how are you gonna, repurpose it for a household utilization purpose? Are you gonna add any chemicals so that the flames are visible, or like any agent to recognize its leak by any smelling senses or anything?
Yeah, so a couple of years ago, I was actually interacting with the National Physical Laboratory, which is a government-led laboratory for the UK, and they're actually working on the smell of hydrogen, what it's going to smell like, so that we can detect it if it does speak. So I've heard this question before, the hydrogen hub, and the answer that I got from the gas network is that there's so many impurities in the line that they're currently using, actually generates a colour similar to methane because of all these impurities and stuff burning. So I'm not sure in the future these are going to be burnt out, but for current use, it does have a flame, it does have a colour. It's not invisible.
And what's the social acceptance for like domestic uses, not like industrial? Like if in UK, like if you're proposing hydrogen to be used in household, like what's the social acceptance?
So what's the social acceptance piece? Well, we're working against hydrogen balloons exploding is what we're working against, which everyone knows hydrogen as that, and they don't know it as a useful gas and that could be utilised. So work we're doing currently with matching costs, just taking some of this with one of our profs from Teesside University, but it is looking into exactly that, which is the social acceptance of hydrogen, and why people won't accept it or will accept it. I don't know the correct answer, but we are working.
Okay, so I noticed prominently the EU Development Fund.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about your relationship to the fund, what they're expecting in terms of your involvement on the continent, and then also the larger question of whether post-Brexit the environmental targets for industries with Fit for 55 and such are going to be applied to the industries in your area, and what your policy position is on some of those regulations.
Interesting question. So Our relationship with the EU, so this European Union Fund actually ran out in June. So as I came here, it ran out, so we actually inputted all our outputs to it and we closed that off now. So we no longer have access to EIDF funding for over the next 6 months, stopping our access to it. That says the UK, that's just not us as the net zero centre. Our engagement with it was heavy as a UK and as a university. So if you travelled around the UK, you'd actually see not only university buildings, but fields, parks, community centres funded by EIDF. So we're now looking at replacements for that, and that's actually been devolved through the government to local councils, who now have something called the Shared Prosperity Fund, which is a similar action to our EIDF funding, but not in the exact replica. Yeah, we are losing our EIDF, but we are getting our SPF. So in terms of looking at legislation differences between the UK and EU, what we're doing is following the framework of the EU. So we still look at what the EU are doing and still look at their policies and framework and do use them as others. So we are leaning on them still or looking at them still as a guide. But that also does allow us a chance to skip a few steps in essence and move forwards and push forwards legislation that impacts UK directly. So be a bit more positive towards our own needs now.
And are some of the major emitters in your area subject to very sharp requirements for reductions, based on the EU framework? I don't know whether it's the aviation sector or cement or others.
Sure. Different industries will class sharp as different routes because a few of them can achieve it quite easily. Some of them will have a long way to go. A lot of them have looked at 2030 to bring down their carbon emissions by so much. It's the government overall who's put legislation to actually reduce industrial clusters, there are, to the lowest certain amount. So I guess that's why with all these sort of percentages that are put in 50%, I believe is our sort of first target. And that's why they're showing, or we're applying for so much money as Teesside to actually reduce the carbon. Yeah, there's quite a few intricacies involved with the legislation as well coming into that. So one problem I have with actually the circular economy is there are waste materials. Well, an industry's waste material is classed as waste. So once it's used, it has to go to landfill. We're currently working with the Environment Agency to actually bring that back around to actually reuse it. But they won't allow the resale of it. So they won't be allowed to use it as a product again. So they can't, in essence, double dip their product. So it has to go to landfill. So we're looking at working with them to actually generate a new product, a new innovative product that we can actually sell back into the industry. So there is a little sort of pockets of legislation that are changing. So yeah, have you got any more? Do you want to expand on that? Or?
Thank you. We could spend a long time talking
Yeah.
about this, but I appreciate it.
If you don't mind, can I ask one more question? I saw in one of your slides that Teesside Valley already have some of the existing oil pipelines, which Teesside government is proposing to transition into a CO2 pipelines, right? So does government support that, or the pipeline regulating agency over there have like a stringent requirements, restriction? Because I know like oil pipelines operate at a much lower pressure than CO2 pipelines, right? So how are you repurposing it?
Absolutely. So all of our pipelines are actually involved owned by one company called Ellis Marshall. They actually own the infrastructure. So they've actually got funding through the government to actually sort of change their pipeline basically. So they're looking at implementing it over the next 5 years and starting to change it and repurpose. So I don't know the exact specs of what they're doing to change it, but they are looking. The plans are online and I can share them with you later.
Do you know what the middle of powerhouse funding?
No, in essence. It's been a while since I've interacted with because Jürgen Meyer is head of the Northern Powerhouse, and I've not heard from him for a while, so I'm not really sure on the update from him.
When we launched the Midlands Energy, right? So that direct money from the Northern Power, so they're just planting on
Which one started?
the Midlands Energy.
Yeah,
There's not conflict.
no. Well, no, not directly, probably indirectly, yeah, we're two different regions, so we've got the Midlands and the North. Yeah, the North here includes everything else, probably Sheffield. Sheffield, Midlands would be Sheffield, yeah, two different regions. That's a long time.
Kevin, do you have anything that you want to wrap up with?
I just wanted to say thank you very much, Ellis, for coming by. Also, thanks to your colleagues at Teesside. We are very interested in moving forward to form this transatlantic net zero center of net excellence. It's very exciting. And, you know, to let everyone know, we are working on an MOU between the two universities to kind of bring that together. And again, we welcome you anytime to come over here. Of course, you're seeing some of the warmest days of the years. Of course, it would be fair for you to come in January, see some of the coldest days of the years. But anytime our doors are open, and we welcome the collaboration. Thank you.
Great.